Hey, what's up? Everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're diving into something a little gritty, a little chaotic, and honestly, a little smelly, the medieval inn. Picture this, a place where weary travelers crash. Suspicious stew simmers in the corner. Ale flows like a river, and yeah, lice probably have their own VIP section. You spend half the night wondering if that noise upstairs is someone snoring or, well, not making it through the night. So, grab a snack. Get cozy, but not too cozy, because medieval vibes are anything but clean. If you're digging the vibe already, smash that like button and hit subscribe if you're here for the journey. Oh, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I love seeing who's joining us from all corners of the globe. All right, let's dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft medieval hum and step into this wild world together. The innkeeper doesn't just wake up, he's yanked awake by the charming sound of someone sneezing directly onto the floorboards below his room. Then comes a groan, a crash, and yep, there it is, the unmistakable clatter of a chicken bolting out the front door for the third time this week. He cracks one eye open. It's still dark, which in medieval timekeeping means it's either way too early or way too late. No in between. He sits up, slow and creaky, like he's peeling himself off a loaf of stale bread, and rubs the sleep from his face with a sleeve that's seen better days. Think less linen and more saddlebag after a long ride. His bed's not terrible, just basic, a straw mattress that slopes, like it's got opinions, a blanket that smells faintly of garlic and last week's ale. It's cozy in the way a damp cloak is cozy if you squint and don't ask questions. Getting dressed is a process. Step 1, tunic. Step 2, trousers. Step 3, belt. If he can find it. After a quick rummage, he spots it hanging on a peg behind the door, alongside a spoon, a candle stub, and, someone's sock. He doesn't ask whose. Questions before sunrise are a rookie mistake. Downstairs, the common room is eerily quiet, like the calm before a storm. There's evidence of life, a tipped-over mug, a lone boot by the hearth, and a guy snoring under a table with the confidence of someone who's made this his lifestyle. The innkeeper tiptoes around him. Waking guests too early can lead to awkward conversations, sometimes at sword point, and he's not in the mood for that today. He heads to the hearth, stoking it with a quick flick of the poker. The goal's warmth, not a bonfire. Firewood's pricey. And the last time he got a real blaze going, someone tried to roast a goose indoors, feathers and all. As he sets a pot over the flames to reheat whatever last night's stew has morphed into, he hears the distant bray of a mule and the thud of boots. Early travelers, he sighs. The inn's not fancy, but it's warm, it's bustling, and most importantly, it's his. Another day begins. Breakfast at the inn isn't so much a meal as a high-stakes negotiation between what's edible and what might get you arrested. The innkeeper ladles a thick glop of something into a pot over the hearth. It doesn't have a name, but it's got a smell. Imagine boiled oats mixed with a wet boot that's been daydreaming about cabbage. This is pottage, the medieval MVP. It's not a recipe, it's a philosophy. Yesterday's pottage had barley and turnips. Today's got those same turnips. Now mushier, plus some questionable bits from a goose that didn't make it out alive. Add water, heat, repeat. It's like soup, if soup gave up on its dreams halfway through. Then there's the bread, hard as a roof tile, cut with the care of someone who doesn't want to snap another knife. Guests chew it slowly, partly for digestion, partly to rethink their life choices. And the ale, oh yeah, breakfast beer is a thing. It's not a stereotype. It's survival, the water's sketchy, milk's for the Lord's barn cat, and tea's still a pipe dream in some far-off land. The ale's weak, but it's boiled and filtered through sheer desperation. Even the kids drink it with adult supervision. Of course, this is a classy joint. Guests start trickling in. A merchant, clutching his coin purse like it's a sacred relic. A sleepy pilgrim, muttering about blisters and gripping his walking stick. And, inevitably, the bard, who asks for honey for his pottage. Like honey hasn't been under lock and key for weeks. The barmaid, let's call her Marjorie, because she deserves a name, moves through the chaos like a pro. She's nimble, immune to nonsense, and dodges bad pickup lines with the grace of someone who's heard every terrible poem a drunk traveler can muster. By the end of breakfast, the inn smells like smoke, barley, and misplaced ambition. Empty bowls clatter. Stomachs are full-ish. Spirits are lukewarm. It's not gourmet, but it's hot. It's filling, and nobody's dead yet. In medieval terms, that's a win. If there's one thing the inn doesn't need, it's more people yet. By mid-morning, they swarm in like pigeons with luggage, and about as much regard for hygiene. First up, a knight in mismatched, rusty armor held together with what looks like curtain rope. He demands a private room, despite having no coin, no manners, and a vibe that screams, I lost a bet with a horse. Next, a merchant's apprentice who talks like he owns a fleet of ships, but tries to pay for soup with buttons. He haggles like this is a medieval Groupon deal. Then, the bard, every inn's got one. He doesn't pay, but swears his songs are worth more than gold. Spoiler, they're not. He strums a lute with half its strings missing, singing about lost love and stolen goats. Nobody asked. A monk shuffles in, blessing the furniture and eyeing the bread. Within 10 minutes, she's eating it, claiming it's not a sin if the loaf was already broken. By noon, the inn's a circus of clashing personalities and smells. Someone's drying socks by the hearth, another's sharpening a knife for no reason, and a kid's chasing a goose with a grudge. Two travelers argue over the only non-wobbly stool. The innkeeper, calm as a monk on payday, has seen it all. He knows by evening someone will fall in love. Someone will pass out in their soup, and someone, probably the bard, will challenge that stool to a duel. He pours another ale, wipes the counter with a rag that's seen better centuries, and nods to Marjorie. They share a silent pact. This place is chaos, but it's their chaos. The inn's soul, if it's got one, is Marjorie. She's maybe 20, maybe 30, or maybe she just aged fast from dealing with poets. Nobody knows, and nobody asks. What's clear is the inn would collapse without her. She glides through the madness, one hand balancing a tray of mugs, the other swatting away wandering hands with lethal precision. Her reflexes are sharper than a ferret in a pantry. A drunk mercenary once tried to compliment her ankles and woke up 2 days later with his boots nailed to the ceiling. Marjorie's a multitasker. She takes orders in 4 dialects, pours ale without spilling, and insults nobles without technically committing treason. She's not rude, she's efficient. She knows who'll pay in coin and who'll try to barter with seashells. She can spot a fake accent, a stolen ring, or a flirt disguised as a food complaint. The monk might preach about sin, but Marjorie's the patron saint of keeping things moving. Her day starts before dawn and ends when the fire's just embers. In between, she serves stew, chases kids, bandages knees, and refills mugs while dodging flying cutlery and breaking up arguments about who owns the goat that wandered in at lunch. And she never drops the tray. That's her superpower. The innkeeper might own the walls, but Marjorie rules the floor with a wink, a sharp word, or a stare that could curdle milk. It's a dance, and she's been killing it for years. Lunch is less a meal and more a test of endurance. It starts calm. The hearth glows, the stew bubbles, and Marjorie rings a battered iron triangle to signal food's ready. Then, chaos. Guests pour in from corners you didn't know existed. A trader leaps over a sleeping dog. The bard swings his lute like he's storming a castle. And 2 farmers bicker over who sat down first. Despite 6 empty benches, the innkeeper ladles out pottage, a dish so mysterious only the pot knows its secrets. It's warm, hearty, and tastes like turnip regret. One guest asks if it's vegetarian. Another asks what vegetarian means. The innkeeper ignores both. Bread's handed out with a thud, like it was a doorstop in a past life. Dipping it in stew to soften it breaks a few bowls. One guy tries to trade his crust for more ale. It works. Marjorie weaves through the madness, her tray loaded, her eyes screaming, "I've seen too much." She serves food, flashes smiles, and issues warnings all at once, like a one-woman army near the hearth. 2 guards try to out-burp each other while a monk hums hymns between bites. The goat's back, chilling like it owns the place. Lunch lasts an hour, measured by how long it takes someone to spill ale, accuse a neighbor of cheating at dice, or sing with a mouthful of onion. When it's over, there's a brief, eerie silence until a spoon drops, and it all starts again. Hey, what's good? Everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're diving right back into the sweaty, chaotic heart of our medieval inn, where the stew's questionable, the guests are louder than a bard's ego, and the goat, oh, you know the goat's still causing problems. If you're new here, we're spinning a tale about life in a medieval inn. And trust me, it's a wild ride. If you missed Chapter 1, go check it out for the full vibe links in the description. And if you're loving this so far, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always dope to see who's hanging out with us from around the world. All right, let's crank up the medieval vibes. Maybe imagine a lute riff in the background. And jump into Chapter 2. Lunch is barely over. The last bowls of pottage scraped clean. the bread gnawed into submission, and the goat, yep, escorted out again with a broom and some choice words. Now comes the part of the day the innkeeper dreads most, cleaning up after guests who swore they were super tidy. To the untrained eye, the common room looks like a dining hall with some light clutter. To Marjorie and the innkeeper, it's a crime scene crossed with an archaeological dig. Mysterious stains, lost socks, and way too many onion peels in places onions have no business being. The wooden tables get wiped with a rag that's less about cleaning and more about smearing everything into a medieval glaze. The floors swept, sort of mostly by shoving crumbs under benches and hoping gravity's got their back. Marjorie's on dish duty, stacking bowls with the speed of someone who's done this for a decade and dreams of retirement. A boot turns up under a stool. No one claims it. It joins the maybe someone's stuff pile behind the bar, next to a spoon, a candle stub, and that sock from this morning. Guests who linger too long get the look. Marjorie's signature glance, so potent, it once made a noble tip, a silver coin, and vanish forever. The stew pot's scraped clean. Leftovers go to the pigs, or, let's be real, tomorrow's pottage. Waste not, want not, especially when no one can tell the difference after 3 bowls. The innkeeper mutters about washing mugs, but ends up rinsing them in the rain barrel divine purification. Medieval style. The bucket for soaking! Purely decorative, as the last crumbs are brushed away and the benches, now wobblier than ever, are shoved back into place. The room starts to look like an inn again, not the aftermath of a barley-fueled riot. Marjorie straightens her apron, takes a breath, and braces for the next wave. Because in a medieval inn, peace is just the awkward pause between one mess and the next. Somewhere, someone's already asking when supper's ready, just as Marjorie dares to sip some leftover ale in a rare moment of calm. The door creaks open. New guests, fresh faces, fresh problems, and, oh boy, fresh questions. First up is a traveler in an oversized cloak, sporting a beard that could house a family of squirrels. He strides to the bar and, with the confidence of someone about to leave a 1-star review on parchment, asks, "Do you serve almond milk?" The room goes silent. A stool creaks under the weight of collective judgment. Behind him, a young couple, clearly not married. Judging by their "we're definitely not touching" vibe, asks to see the room first. Marjorie points upstairs. It's wood, has walls, doesn't leak in summer. Usually, they nod and shuffle off. Next, a dusty guest dripping with self-importance demands to know where the inn sources its candles, if the stew's ethically prepared, and whether the goat's trained to stay outside. Right on cue, the goat struts in and sneezes on his boots. Perfect timing. Then there's the bard. Not the morning bard. A new one. He insists on paying with a song, plucks 3 wrong notes on his lute, and launches into a ballad about a lady and a leaky chamber pot. Marjorie shuts it down with a polite broom nudge. The innkeeper nods through every request, complaint, and mispronounced question about wine varieties. There's one wine. It's reddish. He doesn't argue, just smiles and lets Marjorie handle the chaos. Travelers with opinions always arrive loud, and they never travel light. By sundown, the common room's a patchwork of personalities. A quiet scribe scribbles in the corner. Merchants bicker by the fire. The bard still here tries to win hearts through sheer volume. And the goat's now napping under table 3. The innkeeper exhales. Another round of guests. Another batch of tiny disasters waiting to happen. They all think they're the normal ones, which is the scariest part. Supper hits like a tidal wave of noise. Chairs scrape, mugs clink, and someone coughs like they've been waiting 9 minutes and deserve an Oscar for patience. Marjorie emerges from the kitchen with a pot that's technically warm and definitely still stew. The menu hasn't changed. It's the same pottage, reheated with a side of existential dread. It comes with bread that could double as a club and a garnish of guest commentary. This stew tastes different. One traveler says, squinting suspiciously, it's the same stew. Marjorie deadpans, not looking up. Oh, well, it's nice. They mumble, suddenly worried about their spoon privileges. The bard, undeterred, offers a song to honor the meal. He gets one verse in before Marjorie accidentally drops a ladle in his bowl with extra enthusiasm. Message received. By the Hearth. 2 merchants yell about grain prices, somehow louder than the couple upstairs, arguing about how many fleas they found in the bed. The goat's back under the table, being fed scraps by a kid who swears it's his emotional livestock. The stew fills bellies. The ale smooths over its flaws. And despite complaints about texture or the meat's mysterious origins, everyone eats. The innkeeper watches from behind the counter, polishing a mug that hasn't been cleaned since last harvest. He knows in an hour someone will spill something. Someone will pass out mid-sentence. And the bard will try again. He always does. For now, the room's loud, messy, and alive a medieval win. As the last spoons clink and guests lean back with groans of survival, the real show kicks off. Evening entertainment, if you can call it that. There's no stage, no schedule, just pure, unfiltered chaos with a side of mild injury risk. The bard seizes the moment, clearing his throat like he's about to debut at a royal court. He plucks 3 shaky strings and announces a ballad about the fair lady of Festerwell, who married a troll. Half the room cheers, half groans, and the goat sneezes. His voice is enthusiastic. The lyrics rhyme sometimes, and the innkeeper downs a mug of ale, like he's bracing for 6 more verses about sock theft. At another table, 2 old friends slur through a riddle contest with rules no one understands. One riddle might actually be a stew recipe. A monk covers his ears and hums psalms loud enough to wake a village. Then the dice come out wooden, chipped, maybe cursed. Bets are placed with coins, buttons, an old pair, and one guy's left shoe. No one questions it. Marjorie patrols like a hawk, ready to stop spills, fights, or anyone dumb enough to stand on a table. She catches the bard mid-step as he tries a dramatic pose on a wobbly bench. In the corner, a shy traveler pulls out a flute, plays 3 lovely notes, then gets head-butted by the goat. The crowd claps anyway. This isn't polished or even entirely legal in some towns, but it's real, it's loud, messy, and usually ends with someone snoring in their mug or waking up with a soot-drawn tattoo. Closing time isn't a thing. No bell, no last call, just a slow collapse. The bard loses his audience when he swaps lyrics for throat noises. A crust of bread flies applause, or a bribe to stop. Who knows? Guests slump, weighed down by stew and gravity. One merchant leans so far back, he becomes a footrest for his friend. Marjorie stacks mugs like she's building a fortress, her raised eyebrows screaming, "Wrap it up or grab a broom." One peddler begs for a light snack, a full roast duck. He gets bread, a glare, and a suggestion to chew slowly. The goat, technically banned, curls up by the embers. It's earned its spot after outshining half the guests during story hour. The innkeeper makes his rounds, poking the fire, checking the stew pot for passed-out faces, and nudging a snoring traveler onto a bench. A couple stumbles upstairs, hitting every wall. They'll complain about the noise tomorrow. The irony's noted. The room empties in wobbly waves, cloaks, yawns, hiccups. A mug rolls off a table. A boot drops upstairs. The goat sighs. For now, the worst is over. The guests are asleep, or at least horizontal, and the inn is quiet. Sort of. Yo, what's good? Everyone. Welcome back to the channel. We're diving deep into the final chapter of our medieval inn saga, where the stew's still mysterious. The guests are a walking disaster, and the goat, yep. You know, it's stealing the show. If you're just joining us, we've been spinning a tale about life in this chaotic, ale-soaked inn, and it's been a wild ride. Missed the first 2 chapters? Links are in the description. Go catch up for the full vibe. If you're loving this, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always awesome to see who's vibing with us from around the world. All right, let's crank up the medieval chaos. Maybe imagine a creaky lute in the background and jump into Chapter 3, the inn's finally quiet. Well, as quiet as it gets, with a mug rolling off a table and the goat snoring by the embers. It's late. The fire's down to glowing coals, and the common room's still, except for the occasional creak that makes you wonder if the building's settling or something's sneaking through the beams. This is when the innkeeper starts his midnight patrol, an unspoken ritual every innkeeper knows by heart. Armed with a candle, a heavy sigh, and a prayer that no one's set the pantry on fire. He begins his rounds. Downstairs, the benches are empty, mugs half drunk or half spilled, possibly brewing something new. A spoon's floating in the ale barrel. No one's asking how. The innkeeper checks the doors, front and back. They're bolted. Mostly, the front one's got a habit of swinging open during storms or heated arguments, so he props a bucket in front of it, just in case. Behind the counter, he counts the day's take, mostly real coins. Some buttons, a carved bone, and that same old pear from earlier. It goes in the undecided value bowl. Upstairs, he tiptoes like he's sneaking past a pack of drunk wolves. Every floorboard betrays him with a creak louder than a bard's ego. Behind one door, someone snores with the force of a bellows. Behind another, someone mutters about taxes in their sleep. He peeks into the shared room, a tangle of limbs and cloaks. One guy's sleeping upside down. Another's tucked under the bed, like he's hiding from the taxman. The chamber pot's full, as always, and someone's using it as a footrest. Rookie mistake. Then there's the weird stuff. A broom's fallen over again. The candle flickers with no draft. He hears a lute string twang, even though the bard's been asleep for hours or tied to a wagon outside, depending on who you ask. And, of course, the goat's missing. The innkeeper sighs. By this inn's standards, everything's fine. He heads downstairs, blows out the candle, and mutters, "If anything catches fire, let it be the stew." It's the dead of night, and everyone's technically asleep. But restful? Nah. The shared room upstairs hums like a beehive of human misery. Snoring's the soundtrack layered, textured, and deeply unmusical. One guy snores in short bursts, like a hiccuping squirrel. Another goes for volume, rattling the rafters like a wild boar's stuck in the roof. Someone's talking in their sleep, mostly about carrots. Another keeps whispering, "No, my lord," in a tone that's either a nightmare or a spicy dream gone wrong. A boot thuds to the floor. No one flinches. The goat, now curled under someone's cloak, like it owns the place, adds a soft snuffle to the mix. The beds creak every time someone shifts, which is often straw mattresses aren't exactly ergonomic. If you're not poked by a twig in the first 5 minutes, the bed's probably haunted. The heat's another issue. With so many bodies packed in, it's like a summer barn. Cloaks are shed, blankets kicked off, and someone opens the window, letting in a breeze and an owl that refuses to leave. The smell's robust. Think stew digestion, unwashed socks, warm goat, and a hint of ale's ghost. It'd be unbearable if everyone wasn't too exhausted to care. Occasionally, someone bolts upright, thinking it's morning. It's not just darker. They stumble, step on a hand, and get shushed back to bed with a grunt. Marjorie's in the back room, ears tuned for trouble-raised voices, crashes, or rogue lute solos. So far, so good. Downstairs, the innkeeper dozes behind the bar in a chair molded to his spine, clutching a mug he never finished. He dreams of silence. Spoiler, he won't get it. Sleep in a medieval inn comes in shifts, shared spaces, and suspicious warmth. But everyone's horizontal. That's a victory. At the first hint of dawn, that murky gray that could be sunrise, or an ambitious moon, the inn stirs. It's not graceful, more like a barn of animals realizing the gate's open. Feet hit the floor with varying enthusiasm. Someone groans like waking up was a personal attack. Another starts hunting for their missing boot. It's on the hearth. No one knows why. The goat smirks. The shared room empties in waves. Early risers, merchants, monks, and anyone with a guilty conscience creep out first, leaving behind crumpled blankets, muddy footprints, and one guy still snoring, muttering about cheese in his dreams. Downstairs, the innkeeper's awake, which means his eyes are open. But his soul's still in a dreamland with clean mugs and quiet guests. Marjorie sweeps in, wrapped in a shawl and raw determination. She does a silent inventory, 2 tipped stools, a missing candle. And why is there jam on the broom handle? Questions start flying. Has anyone seen my satchel? Did I pay last night? Is this my goat? Marjorie's response is a slow blink and a flat maybe. Then come the denials. I didn't spill that ale. I wasn't snoring. I never said that about the monk's sandals. Everyone denies everything, even when caught with a ladle in their belt or a half-eaten turnip in their boot. The bard stumbles in, bleary-eyed, claiming he's got a new verse about last night's chaos. He's handed porridge and told to eat quietly. For once, he listens. Breakfast is the same old stew, reheated, with ale to wash it down. Life rolls on. By the time the sun's fully up, most guests have paid or bartered and left. Some slink out sheepishly. Others strut like they charmed the whole inn. But one truth holds. Nobody admits what went down after supper. The guests are gone. The goat's been shooed out again, and Marjorie's scraping something unidentifiable off a bench with the focus of a surgeon and the face of someone rethinking every life choice. The common room's quiet now, not peaceful, just catching its breath. Embers crackle in the hearth. The floor's sticky, and one bench leans left, like it's done with everyone's nonsense. The innkeeper cradles a mug of morning ale like it's a family heirloom. Staring across the room, well, that wasn't too bad, he mutters, same as every morning. It was, of course, but optimism's cheaper than therapy. Marjorie passes by with a tray of spoons, a damp rag, and a look that says, "No questions before sunrise." She refills the stew pot with water, salt, and a prayer, stirring like it's her life's mission. Outside, a cart rattles by. A rooster crows like it's auditioning. And a smith's hammer clangs way too loud for this hour. The world's awake. And with it come new guests. The door swings open. A farmer drags in a sack of maybe vegetables. A woman in a travel cloak flashes a smile that screams, "I'm about to complain about prices." And, naturally, a knight with a dented helmet and no indoor voice. Nods are exchanged. Coins change hands. Questions get vague. Answers. The cycle kicks off again. The innkeeper sips his ale. Marjorie reties her apron. A chair's righted. A mug filled. And a stranger asks if there's a vegan option. The inn doesn't change. The stew stays cryptic. The guests unpredictable. And the goat, let's be real, probably has a spare key. Yet they keep coming back. Maybe it's the warmth, the chaos, or the fact that this is the only place in town where your mistakes get swept under the bench with the crumbs. No questions asked. It's not perfect, but it's home for the night, for the fight, or just until the next goose chase. Joe, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're switching gears and diving into something totally different. Story 2, Chapter 1, where we're heading to the 17th century Dutch Republic, a tiny, swampy underdog that somehow became the rock star of Europe. Think of it like a historical glow-up, while everyone else was fighting over crowns and cathedrals. The Dutch were out here inventing capitalism, painting masterpieces, and yes, going absolutely wild over tulips. If you're new, we're spinning a fresh tale, so buckle up. If you loved our medieval inn saga, drop a comment about your favorite moment, and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm always stoked to see who's joining us from around the globe. All right, let's crank up some Golden Age vibes. Imagine a lute, but make it classy and jump into the Dutch Republic. Picture this. It's the early 1600s, and the Dutch Republic is about the size of a pancake, just as flat and mostly reclaimed from the sea. Sounds like a rough start, right? But don't sleep on them. This soggy little patch is about to punch way above its weight. While Europe's big players are stabbing each other over religion, or whose king has the shiniest boots, the Dutch are quietly building an empire of trade, art, and straight-up hustle. It all kicks off with a revolution. Spain's been bossing the Netherlands around for decades, waving the Catholic flag and taxing every fish and tulip bulb in sight. By 1648, after 80 years of fighting think muskets, mud, and a whole lot of yelling, the Dutch finally say, "We're out." Boom! They're free. What happens next isn't some grand national plan. It's a free-for-all, like Silicon Valley with wooden shoes and a herring obsession. Amsterdam turns into the Wall Street of Europe. Its ports are packed with ships sailing to Asia, Africa, the Americas, anywhere with goods to trade or, let's be real, people to exploit. The Dutch East India Company, or VOC, is basically the Amazon Prime of the 17th century, making bank on nutmeg, porcelain, and colonization. These guys aren't just shipping spices, they're inventing the stock market, dividends, and shareholder drama. Meanwhile, back home, folks are sipping beer, reading newspapers, and getting their portraits painted by legends like Rembrandt and Vermeer. These artists aren't just slapping paint on canvas. They're making history. Vermeer's capturing quiet moments lit like a movie, and Rembrandt's giving old guys and Bible stories more drama than a reality TV finale. Art's not just for kings anymore. Merchants want in, and even butchers are commissioning still lifes with pig heads and lemons. Tasteful. Then there's the tulip thing. Oh, man. Tulip mania. For a hot minute, people are selling houses just to own a single flower bulb. One bulb, it's like if NFTs were plants. The market crashes hard, but by then, the Dutch are already legends, wildly successful, a little unhinged, and never boring. So, how does a tiny, damp republic become Europe's envy? By mastering the seas, the stock market, and the self-portrait. And this is just the start. If the Dutch Golden Age has a heartbeat, it's in the docks. Rotterdam, Amsterdam, Hoorn, Delft. These aren't just cities. They're launch pads for global domination, fueled by sales and spreadsheets. While France is polishing its wigs and Spain's counting gold coins, the Dutch are inventing capitalism one logbook at a time. Their secret weapon, the merchant fleet. At their peak, they've got more ships than anyone, more than England. Spain, or common sense, should allow. These aren't rickety fishing boats. They're armed merchant ships, sleek and practical, loaded with cannons and cargo space. They're hauling silk from China, spices from Indonesia, sugar from Brazil, and occasionally lobbing a cannonball at pirates who get too cocky. The VOC, that Dutch East India Company, is the world's first multinational corporation. Shareholders, stock markets, dividends. It's capitalism before it was cool. Or, let's be honest, ethical. The VOC does whatever it takes to protect profits. Fortresses, private armies, and some seriously ruthless colonial moves. The spice trade isn't just cutthroat, it's heads roll territory. Meanwhile, the West India companies handling the Atlantic sugar, rum, and, slavery. The Dutch role in the transatlantic slave trade isn't a footnote. It's systemic, calculated, and profitable. The same folks commissioning paintings of milkmaids are trading human lives on ledgers. The Golden Age has a dark, tarnished underbelly. But amid the brutality, the Dutch bring order to global trade. Their ships sail fixed routes. Cargoes are cataloged. Ports are clean and insured, like nobody's business. If anyone could ship tulips, cheese, and gunpowder on the same boat without mixing up the labels, it's them. They're not just navigating oceans, they're navigating economics. Other countries send explorers. The Dutch send accountants with muskets. Their empire's built on balance sheets, not just swords. And somehow, their little republic keeps thriving. Now, let's zoom into the artsy side. Because while ships are hauling spices, something else is brewing in quiet Dutch towns. Enter Johannes Vermeer, the guy who turns everyday life into poetry. He's not churning out paintings like Rembrandt, who's basically an art factory. Vermeer's got maybe 35 known works less than what Rembrandt spills on the floor in a bad week. But what Vermeer lacks in quantity, he makes up for in pure magic. His paintings are calm, composed, and glow like sunlight holding its breath. A girl pours milk. A woman reads a letter. A window casts soft light. It's ordinary, but he makes it eternal. What sets Vermeer apart? Precision, detail, and a Jedi-level mastery of light. His interiors aren't just backgrounds, they're characters. You can almost hear the floorboards creak or a clock tick. This is the Dutch Golden Age in a nutshell. While the world's racing forward, artists like Vermeer capture the sacredness of slow, quiet moments. And it's not just him. The Dutch are art-obsessed. The average home has more paintings than forks. Landscapes, portraits, still lifes, ships, cows, and a weird amount of dead fish on tables. Why? Because this is a middle-class country. Merchants, bakers, brewers, they've got money and taste. They don't want angels in clouds. They want their world, just better lit. Vermeer's paintings aren't loud or political. They whisper, and in those whispers, there's a whole story about intimacy, solitude, and the quiet drama of daily life. He paints what's overlooked and makes it unforgettable. But this art explosion isn't happening in a vacuum. The Dutch Republic's a hub of ideas. 2, printing presses churn out books when other countries would burn them. Philosophers like Spinoza and Descartes are writing here, safe from the stake. Universities like Leiden and Utrecht are pulling in students from all over Europe to study law, medicine, even optics. And because it's the Dutch, they're doing it in buildings clean enough to eat off, with notes organized like a monk's dream. Mapmakers like John Blaeu aren't just sketching coastlines, they're redrawing how Europe sees the world. Their atlases are gorgeous, sometimes wildly off, but packed with detail. Want to dream about Java or Brazil? Open a Dutch map. This isn't just for scholars. The middle class eats it up. Pamphlets, travelogues, poetry, even gossip from Constantinople Literacy's not a luxury, it's a lifestyle. But it's not all sunshine and ideas. Religious tensions simmer. Some books get banned. And even the Dutch have limits when radicals start messing with property law. Still, for a republic of a few million, they're shaping modern thought like heavyweights. And then there's the tulip craze. Picture a pub in 1636. You're a baker, minding your business, when a guy offers to sell you a tulip bulb. Not a bouquet, just one bulb for the price of your house, and you consider it. Welcome to Tulip Mania, the world's first financial bubble. Tulips, especially rare, striped ones, become status symbols. Owning one's like flexing a Ferrari, except you dig it up and pray no one cooks it. At first, it's rich collectors, but soon everyone's in farmers, barbers, chimney sweeps. People trade futures contracts for bulbs that haven't bloomed. It's not about flowers, it's about flipping promises. For a moment, tulips are the Bitcoin of the 1600s. Then, in February 1637, the bubble pops. People stop buying, prices crash, and that bulb you bet your canal house on. Worthless. Plant it and enjoy the view. The Dutch economy doesn't tank, but it's embarrassing lawsuits, sermons about greed. The works, Tulip Mania, becomes a cautionary tale about hype and hubris. But the Dutch, they shrug, dust off their clogs, and keep building their empire of books, maps, and ideas. That's where we're headed next, into the streets, the canals, and the wild experiment that made this republic shine. Joe, what's good? Everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're diving back into the Dutch Golden Age, where the Netherlands is out here flexing as the ultimate underdog, building canals, painting masterpieces, and accidentally inventing modern capitalism. If you missed Chapter 1, we set the stage for this tiny, soggy republic that's punching way above its weight with ships, spices, and some seriously wild tulip drama. Go check it out. Links in the description. If you're vibing with this, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing who's joining us from around the globe. All right, let's crank up the 17th century vibes. Picture a harpsichord riff and a canal breeze and jump into Chapter 2 of our Dutch adventure. We left off with the Dutch Republic buzzing ports packed with ships, Vermeer painting quiet magic, and Tulip Mania crashing like a bad investment TikTok. But let's step out of those glowing studios and into the streets. Because this republic isn't just about art or trade. It's about building a world that's as practical as it is pretty. Imagine a city that looks like a painting, clean lines, soft curves, everything in its place, even the ducks. That's Amsterdam in the 1600s, a masterpiece of urban design crafted by engineers, merchants, and a stubborn refusal to let water win. The Dutch didn't just build cities, they drained them into existence. Half the Republic's land was underwater until they sweet-talked it with dikes, pumps, and sheer willpower, where others saw swamp. The Dutch saw prime real estate. At the heart of this is Amsterdam's canal ring, the Grachtengordel, elegant, efficient, and basically urban poetry. Concentric canals carve the city into neat districts, with boats moving goods faster than carts ever could. Rich merchants build tall, narrow houses with steep steps and big windows, flexing just enough wealth to impress without looking. You know, French. Those iconic gables. Not just style, they're tax hacks. Property taxes were based on width, not height, so everyone built upward, squeezing luxury into skinny, vertical elegance. The result? A skyline that looks like gingerbread real estate with a Calvinist vibe. Fancy, but not too fancy. Brick's the go-to material, cheap, sturdy, and giving the streets a Renaissance Minecraft glow. But it's not just about looks. These houses have winches and pulleys to hoist furniture through windows, because the spiral staircases inside are less grand and more claustrophobia simulator. Public buildings are popping off 2 town halls, guild halls, weighing stations. Amsterdam's town hall, finished in 1655, is so epic that Louis XIV calls it the 8th wonder of the world and immediately tries to copy it because that's his brand. These buildings aren't just pretty, they scream civic pride. The Dutch aren't about kings or cathedrals. They're about cities, citizens, and keeping things orderly. Clean streets, tidy facades, and a vibe that says, "We've got this," but beneath the polished brick, there's tension. The Dutch Republic's not some utopia of cheese and chill. It's a pressure cooker of politics, religion, and military flexing. Let's start with politics. The Republic is less a unified government and more a jigsaw puzzle of provinces, each clutching its rights like a kid hoarding candy. Power lies with wealthy merchants in cities like Amsterdam and Leiden. Guys who aren't nobles but have the cash to act like it. At the top is the stadtholder, usually from the House of Orange, a military leader with just enough clout to make everyone nervous. Think of him as a king with an asterisk. Some provinces vibe with him, others side-eye him hard. It's a constant tug-of-war between centralized power and provincial mind, your business energy. Like a group project where half the team wants to fire the leader, and the other half's related to him. Religion's another minefield. The Dutch ditched Catholicism, but that didn't mean unity. Calvinists run the show, and they're not exactly throwing open mic nights for free thought. Other Protestants, Jews, and Catholics are tolerated, but only if they keep it low-key. No big churches, no parades. Everything's chill on the surface. But privately, tense. You can feel the side-eyes at the market. And internationally, the Dutch are the new kids who got too popular too fast. England, once their Protestant buddy, now sees them as economic rivals, sparking the Anglo-Dutch War's naval brawls where both sides lose ships. Pride, and occasionally they're cool. Dutch Admiral Michiel de Ruyter's a legend, sailing up the Thames and stealing England's flagship just for kicks. But wars are pricey. Fleets, trade routes, and bribing neighbors not to attack. It's a lot for a small republic to juggle. While the canals gleam and the markets hum, the Dutch are also rewriting how the world thinks. Their printing presses are working overtime, pumping out books that would get you torched in Spain. Amsterdam's a safe haven for rebels with quills. Descartes is publishing here, Spinoza's dropping wild ideas about God being less sky grandpa and more cosmic vibe. And somehow, they're not getting arrested mostly. Universities like Leiden and Utrecht are intellectual magnets, pulling in students to study law, medicine, even how light bends. And because it's the Dutch, they're doing it in spotless classrooms with notes organized like a museum exhibit. Map makers like Joan Bleu are crafting atlases that aren't just maps. They're art, redrawing how Europe dreams about the world. Sure, some coasts are off, but the detail's insane. The middle class is eating it up: newspapers, travelogues, science treatises, even spicy poetry. Literacy's not just for monks, it's for bakers and brewers too. But it's not all enlightenment and chill. Some ideas push too far, and even the Dutch have limits. Religious hardliners grumble. Philosophers get censored, and books get quietly banned when they mess with the wrong people, like the ones who own the ships. Still, for a republic of a few million, they're shaping ideas like a superpower. Back to the streets. The Dutch are building like they're allergic to wasted space. Those canal houses aren't just homes. They're statements. Merchants live above their warehouses, with goods flowing in and out like clockwork. The canals aren't just pretty, they're highways for trade. Boats zip through, loaded with cheese, timber, or sketchy spices from halfway across the globe. Public spaces are just as sharp. Market squares are clean. Guild halls are grand but not gaudy. And everything's designed to work. The Dutch don't build for show, they build for flow. It's a mindset, practical, precise, and quietly proud. But the cracks are starting to show. The tulip crash was a warning greed can outrun sense. Political fights between the stadtholder and the merchants are getting spicier. Religious tolerance is more don't ask, don't tell than true harmony. And those wars with England, they're draining the coffers. The Dutch are juggling commerce, culture, and colonies like pros. But forever's a long time. The Golden Age is glowing, but it's not bulletproof. Next, we'll dive into the twilight of this era. How does a Golden Age fade? With a bang. A war, or just a quiet yawn from history. Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. We're wrapping up our dive into the Dutch Golden Age, where a tiny, soggy republic turned the 17th century into their personal playground with canals, capitalism, and some next-level art. If you missed Chapters 1 and 2, we've been unpacking how the Dutch went from underdogs to global bosses, mastering trade, painting like legends, and surviving the tulip mania crash. Catch up with the links in the description. If you're loving this vibe, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always dope to see who's riding with us from around the world. All right, let's dial up the Golden Age. Feels, think a soft harpsichord and the creak of a merchant ship, and jump into Chapter 3, where we see how this golden era starts to flicker and what it leaves behind. The Dutch Golden Age doesn't end with a bang. It's not like a dragon burns Amsterdam or a meteor wipes out the canals. It's more like a party where the best guests slip out early. Someone spills the wine, and the vibe just shifts. By the late 1600s, the Republic's still kicking. But the shine's fading. The signs are subtle at first. Trade's still strong, but competitors are catching up. England's getting savvy with their own East India Company, adding colonial swagger and a monarchy that loves the spotlight. France, under Louis XIV, is flexing hard, not content with fancy wigs. He wants Dutch cities on his trophy shelf. The wars that follow are brutal and expensive. The Dutch win some, lose more, and bleed cash the whole time. At home, there's a weird vibe. Boredom. The spark of innovation slows. Painters stop pushing boundaries and start churning out safe bets, rows of cows, sleepy windmills, ships that look like they've been painted before. Art's not dead, just predictable. Banking gets cautious. Too, those canal houses are still gorgeous, but the energy's different, like the Republic's running on fumes. There's a deeper fracture. Too, the divide between the House of Orange and the merchant regents gets nasty. The middle class, once the engine of progress, starts to stagnate. Old money and new ambition clash. Worst of all, young Dutch folks stop believing they're the center of the world. Because, well, they're not anymore. The final blow isn't one big disaster. It's a shift in the wind. The Enlightenment's dawning elsewhere. Britain snatches the crown as the world's financial and naval superpower. France takes over in art and science, at least until the guillotine crashes the party. The Dutch, once Europe's marvel, get quietly edged out of the spotlight. It's not a collapse. It's a fade, like a painting left in the sun too long. But even as the curtain falls, the Dutch Golden Age leaves echoes that never really stop. Let's talk legacy, because the Dutch didn't just shine, they reshaped the world. Start with capitalism. They didn't invent money or greed, but they made them work. The world's first stock exchange, Dutch, shareholder capitalism. Dutch, financial tricks like bonds and dividends. You guessed it. If you've ever stressed over a stock app or squinted at a market graph, tip your hat to those 17th century merchants. They also revolutionized trade, not just with ships, but with systems, insurance, record keeping, double entry bookkeeping. They polished it all to a shine in Amsterdam. Sure, their colonial game had a dark side, but logistically, geniuses. They made global trade scalable, predictable, and, dare I say, sexy. In art, their fingerprints are eternal. Vermeer's soft light, Rembrandt's raw drama, the cozy realism of domestic scenes. These became the blueprint for Western painting. They taught us that greatness doesn't need gods or battles. Sometimes it's a woman pouring milk, frozen in a quiet moment. Those paintings still hang in museums, whispering about a time when the ordinary felt divine. And ideas, the Dutch carved out a space for reason. Their imperfect tolerance let thinkers like Spinoza and Descartes publish stuff that would have been burned elsewhere. That freedom helped spark the Enlightenment big ideas, like religious pluralism and scientific curiosity took root in Dutch soil. Even their cities set a standard. Amsterdam's canals, Utrecht's universities, those brick gables and clean streets. They became templates for modern urban life. Order without extravagance. function with a side of elegance. They didn't build for kings, they built for people. And that's the heart of it. The Dutch Golden Age wasn't about empires or divine right nonsense. It was about what a small, determined, slightly obsessive republic could do with brains, grit, and a knack for bookkeeping. It didn't last forever, nothing does. But in that century, they showed the world a new kind of success, powered by regular folks doing extraordinary things. Now, let's zoom out and look at how this legacy plays on the ground. The Dutch Republic's influence didn't vanish when its golden glow dimmed. Those trade systems kept global markets humming. Dutch legal codes and shipping routes shaped international law and commerce for centuries. Their maps, even the wonky ones, inspired explorers and dreamers. And their art, it's not just in galleries, it's in how we see the world, valuing the small moments as much as the grand ones. The Republic itself kept chugging along, adapting to a new reality. It stayed a player in trade and culture, just not the headliner anymore. Politically, the Dutch left a lesson: a republic doesn't need a king to thrive, but it does need balance. Their constant tug-of-war between provinces and the stadtholder showed how messy democracy can be, but also how it can work when people compromise, or at least argue productively. That model influenced later democracies, including the early United States, where debates about centralized power versus local rights sound awfully familiar. The Dutch proved you could govern through consensus, not crowns, even if it meant a few shouting matches over herring tariffs. Culturally, the Golden Age gave the Dutch a quiet swagger that's still there. Modern Netherlands carries that same vibe: practical, innovative, a little cheeky. They're still masters of water management, still love a good bike lane, and still have a knack for making cities feel like home. Visit Amsterdam today, and you'll see those canals, those gables, that same obsession with order and beauty. The tulips, still a flex, just less likely to bankrupt you. But the real legacy is in the mindset. The Dutch Golden Age showed what's possible when you bet on people. Not just power. They took a swamp, a few ships, and a wild idea that merchants and artists could outshine kings and turned it into a global moment. It's a reminder that greatness doesn't need a throne. Sometimes it's a guy with a paintbrush, a ledger, or a really good canal plan. That spirit lives on in startups, in studios, in anyone who looks at a problem and thinks, I can build something better. As the 17th century fades, the Dutch Republic isn't gone. It's just passing the torch. The world they shape keeps spinning, from stock markets to skylines, to the way we chase big ideas. They weren't perfect. Their wealth came with blood and exploitation, and their tolerance had limits. But they dared to dream bigger than their borders. And that's what makes their story timeless. The Golden Age ends not with a crash, but with a handoff to Britain, to France, to the modern world, and somewhere in a quiet Dutch attic, a Vermeer painting still glows, reminding us that even when the spotlight moves on, the light of a golden moment never really fades. Joe, what's good? Everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're kicking off a brand new tale tonight. Story 3, Chapter 1, diving into the ancient Olympic Games, where it's all dust, sweat, and sacred olive wreaths. Forget stadiums with jumbotrons or athletes in sponsored sneakers. These games were raw, religious, and, oh yeah, totally nude. We're talking 776 BCE, in a Greek sanctuary dedicated to Zeus himself, where running a race was less about medals and more about divine vibes. If you're new here, we're starting fresh, so buckle up. If you loved our Dutch Golden Age or Medieval Inn saga, drop a comment with your favorite moment, and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm hyped to see who's joining us from around the world. All right, let's crank up the ancient Greek energy. Imagine a lyre riff and the roar of a crowd and jump into the Olympics. Old school style. It's 726 BCE, and we're in Olympia, a quiet religious sanctuary in the Peloponnese, tucked in a lush grove called the Altis. This isn't just a sports field. It's a holy site for Zeus, king of the gods, lightning bolt enthusiast, and apparent fan of chiseled athletes. The first Olympic Games aren't some local track meet to kill time between harvests. They're sacred to the ancient Greeks. Physical excellence and worship go hand in hand, competing in the blistering Greek sun. Buck naked isn't just flexing, it's an offering to Zeus. Way better than sacrificing goats or scribbling poems. Testing your body's limits in front of the big guy upstairs. That's the ultimate divine flex. The origins are a mythological mess. Some say Hercules started the games after cleaning the Augean stable's gross job. Epic PR move. Others claim King Pelops, of cursed family fame, kicked it off after winning a chariot race. Either way, by 776 BCE, the games are official, recorded, and already a big deal. The first event, the Stadion, a 600-foot sprint, one length of the track. The only recorded winner is Korobos of Elis, a cook. Yup, the first Olympic champ's a guy who probably trained dodging kitchen fires and slicing goat meat. No trophy, no cash, just an olive wreath, eternal glory, and maybe some poems about his thighs. All competitors are Greek, male, and citizens. Women banned from competing or watching unless they're priestesses. Married women sneaking in risk, getting yeeted off a cliff, harsh, even for ancient vibes. The stakes are huge. Winning isn't just personal, it's for your polis, your city-state. A victory brings glory to Athens, Sparta, or wherever you're repping. You're not just a dude anymore. You're a hero. And in ancient Greece, heroes live forever. The games start small, but they're about to get wild. Things escalate fast. That one sprint turns into a full lineup of events testing speed, strength, and how well you handle olive oil in a wrestling match. Running stays core. After the Stadion, they add the Diolos, a 400-meter dash down the track and back. Then comes the Dolichos, a long-distance grind, up to 24 laps, over 5 kilometers in the Greek summer sun. Naked, no water breaks, just you and a whole lot of dust. But the Greeks aren't just about cardio. They love combat. Wrestling, or pale, is technical. No biting or eye gouging. But you need 3 clean throws to win. It's like chess with muscles. Pankration, though, that's chaos boxing and wrestling mixed. With punches, kicks, chokes, and barely any rules. Don't kill the guy in front of the judges, and you're good. The crowd eats it up. Boxing, called pygmachia, is straight up brutal. No gloves, just leather straps on your knuckles. Matches end in blood, broken bones, or surrender. It's less float like a butterfly, and more survive with your face intact. The pentathlons for the all-rounders. Running, wrestling, long jump, javelin, and discus. Long jump's weird. They use weights called halteres for momentum, which sounds like a recipe for tripping. Chariot racing, held in the hippodrome, is fast, dangerous, and sometimes deadly. Fun twist. The horse owners, not the drivers, get the prize. So some rich guy's stable boy risks his neck while the boss takes the wreath. Classic. Every event pushes limits, sometimes past breaking, but it's not about gold or fame. It's about kleos, eternal glory. In ancient Greece, that's worth more than any paycheck. The games aren't just a flex. They're a prayer in sweat and grit. Olympia's more temple than stadium. Before anyone runs or throws, the vibe's got to be holy. The Temple of Zeus, a massive Doric masterpiece, looms over everything, housing a giant ivory and gold statue of the god, one of the 7 wonders of the world. It's like Zeus is refereeing, rituals start days early. Athletes swear oaths before Zeus, Horkios, Zeus of oaths, not to cheat, bribe, or bite. Breaking that vow isn't just bad sportsmanship. It's sacrilege. Cheaters pay fines, and the cash funds bronze Zeus statues along the entrance. Eternal shade for the shady. Sacrifices are big. Dozens of bulls are slaughtered at Zeus's altar. The smoke and blood, a communal offering. The meat's cooked and shared, turning the games into a sacred BBQ. A holy flame, lit by the sun's rays, burns at Hestia's altar, inspiring today's Olympic torch, minus the bulls. Spectators, athletes, and judges aren't just here for sport. They're here for spiritual renewal, to see divine favor in human excellence. The air's thick with incense and hype. Winning means Zeus is Team You. Losing means maybe you skimped on prayers. At night, with altars still warm, Olympia's alive with music, feasting, and philosophers arguing about life. It's worship, festival, and spectacle, all in one. Want to compete. Hope you're a freeborn Greek man with a solid tan. The games are exclusive citizens only. No slaves, no foreigners, and definitely no women. You've got to prove your Greek bloodline, because citizenship's a birthright, not a form. Nudity's mandatory, partly because the Greeks think the male body's divine art, partly to keep things fair. No hidden knives or fancy gear, just muscles and maybe a sunburn. Training's no joke. You need 10 months of prep, plus a final month at Olympia under strict supervision. It's not a hobby, it's a lifestyle of running, grappling, and chucking heavy stuff until you look like a statue. Women out of luck. They can't compete or watch, except for priestesses like Demeter's, who get VIP seats. Married women caught spectating risk the cliff dive. But women have their own gig, the Heraya. Foot races for girls honoring Hera, fully clothed. Of course, Age groups exist, boys, youths, men, but there's no weight classes. Wrestling a guy twice your size. Tough luck. Zeus decides. The games mirror Greek society. Proud, patriarchal, and tightly regulated, it's a showcase of masculinity, oiled up and ready for glory. The Olympics aren't just about biceps, they're a political stage. Greek city-states, usually bickering, use the games to flex their pride. A win isn't just yours, it's your polis's billboard. Athens might have temples, Sparta soldiers, but Olympias where they show off. City-states fund athletes like their civic propaganda, training them to bring home glory. Victories get statues, poems, and free lamb chops for life. The games are also a diplomatic hotspot. Treaties are hashed out, marriages planned, even wars timed around the Olympic truce. Orykocheria, a ceasefire so everyone can travel safely. In theory, it's pan-Hellenic peace. In reality, it's a suggestion Sparta got banned once for ignoring it. The sanctuary's a leaderboard, with cities building treasuries and statues to flex their wins. Even cheating's political. If you bribe someone, your city's rep takes the hit. It's sport, but it's power, too. Joe, what's good? Everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're diving back into the dusty, sweaty, sacred world of the ancient Olympic Games, where it's all about glory, gods, and running naked under the Greek sun. If you missed Chapter 1, we kicked off in 776 BCE, setting the scene in Olympia, where a cook named Coroebus sprinted his way to history, and the games were less about medals and more about pleasing Zeus. Catch up with the link in the description. If you're digging this vibe, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm stoked to see who's joining us from around the globe. All right, let's crank up the ancient Greek energy picture. A lyre strumming, and the crowd roaring, and jump into Chapter 2 of our Olympic saga. We're still in Olympia, where the games are more than a flex. They're a brutal test of body, mind, and how much dust you can handle. Becoming an Olympic athlete isn't like signing up for a 5K with a free t-shirt. It's a lifelong grind. Equal parts devotion, pain, and sand in places sand shouldn't be. You don't just roll up to Olympia ready to sprint. You've got to prove it. And that starts with months of crushing prep. Athletes train in the gymnasium, a Greek hotspot that's part gym, part temple, part philosophy club. The word gymnasium literally means place to be naked, which sums it up. Training's done in the buff, not for shock value, but because the Greeks see the male body as divine art. Plus, it's harder to cheat when you can't hide anything. Serious Olympic hopefuls head to Elis, the city running the show, for a mandatory 30-day boot camp before the games. Under the hawk eyes of trainers and officials, it's relentless sprinting, wrestling, javelin throws, and strength drills that'd make a Spartan cry. The diet, brutal. Barley bread, figs, cheese, and olive oil slathered on your skin. Not eaten, trainers, called Pido tribes, aren't here to coddle. They push you until you're a marble statue, minus the comfy pedestal. Slackers get cut, Judges disqualify anyone who can't hack it before the games even start. No gym memberships, no protein shakes, just the grind for a shot at glory and maybe free dinners for life. It's not just physical. The ideal athlete's got a sound mind. 2, gymnasia double as classrooms where you debate philosophy, ethics, and arete excellence in all things. Competing at Olympia isn't about winning. It's about chasing perfection, becoming a little closer to the gods. You endure heat, strict diets, and endless reps, all for a fleeting moment under Zeus's gaze. That's the deal. The games themselves are a spectacle. For 5 days, Olympia's the center of the Greek world. Pilgrims, poets, merchants, politicians, and pickpockets flood in, turning the sanctuary into a buzzing hive. The opening procession's a mix of ceremony and swagger athletes, oiled up and glistening, march in a line, buck naked. Spectators cheer, city-states wave banners, and judges, called Hellenodikai, watch with faces that say, "Blink wrong," and "You're out." The crowd's massive tens of thousands crammed onto stone or dirt embankments. No tickets, no assigned seats, and definitely no bathrooms worth mentioning. It's loud shouts for hometowns, jeers at rivals, vendors hawking wine and honey cakes, and philosophers muttering about society's decline. A trumpet blares, and the events kick off. Runners bolt from the starting line. No pistol, just a shout and the weight of 1,000 eyes. Wrestlers grapple in the sand, slipping in oil and kicking up dust. Chariots tear around the hippodrome's hairpin turns. Crashes common and sometimes fatal. Pancratians where it gets primal chokes. Punches, twists, all in front of Zeus's statue. Winners get crowned right after their event, with an olive wreath from Olympia's sacred tree. No podiums, just branches and a roaring crowd. But the glory, eternal. Victors are heroes back home, their names carved in stone, their faces in statues. If you're lucky, a poet like Pindar writes you a flowery ode that's basically ancient hype music. Every leap, throw, and sprint is a prayer, an offering to the gods in muscle and grit. Victory's a game changer in ancient Greece. Winning an Olympia isn't just a W, it's a life upgrade. You don't just beat other guys, you've got Zeus's cosign. Back in your polis, you're a rock star. Statues go up. Poets drop verses so extra, they'd make Aphrodite blush. Some cities hook you up with front row seats at festivals. Others give free meals for life, way better than a medal when dinner's not guaranteed. Rich patrons line up to sponsor you. Families push better marriage prospects. And kids learn your name in school. Small-town champs might even get their abs on local coins, immortalized in bronze. But fame's a double-edged sword. You're a symbol now, proof of your city's greatness. Some victors get sent on diplomatic missions. Others are tapped as generals. Your body earned the glory. Now your name's got to carry it. Not everyone handles it well. Some get cocky. One guy tried dedicating a statue to himself. And the gods, only for the locals to fix the inscription. Others try cheating in later games, thinking their rep's bulletproof. Spoiler, it's not. Bribers and liars get fined, humiliated, and sometimes erased from the records. But for the honest, the prize is Kleos' immortal fame. In Greek culture, that's the golden ticket. Die young, your name lives on. Live long. You're a mentor, a legend, maybe a myth. The Olympics aren't just sport. They're a forge for legacy. The games aren't all glory and wreaths, though they're a political chessboard. Greek city-states, usually at each other's throats, use Olympia as a stage to flex their identity. A win's not just yours. It's a billboard for your polis's superiority. Athens, Sparta, Corinth. They're not just cheering for athletes. They're funding them like propaganda machines. These guys aren't amateurs jogging in from the olive grove. They're trained, polished, and sent to make their city look unstoppable. A victory means statues, poems, and civic bragging rights. Entire cities throw feasts for champs because nothing says we're the best like unlimited wine and lamb chops. Olympia's also a diplomatic hub. Leaders meet to talk treaties, arrange marriages, even plan wars around the sacred truce. The Ekecheria. This ceasefire's supposed to let everyone travel safely, pan-Hellenic peace vibes. In practice, it's shaky. Some wars pause, others ignore the memo. Sparta got banned once for being too fight-happy. The sanctuary's a flex zone. Cities build treasuries and statues to show off battle wins or wealth, turning Olympia into a marble leaderboard. Cheating's a political gut punch. 2 if you bribe an opponent. Your city's rep takes the hit. And in Greek rivalries, that's almost worse than losing a war. The games are sport, sure, but they're also power plays under Zeus's watchful eyes. For over 1,000 years, the Olympics burn bright, held every 4 years. No matter what wars, plagues, nothing stops them. From 776 BCE on, Greeks gather to honor the gods, chase glory, and yeet javelins like their lives depend on it. But even sacred traditions can't outrun time. By the 4th century CE, Rome's swallowed the Greek world. The games keep going. But the holy spark fades. Romans love the spectacle gladiators, chariots, blood sports, but sport as divine worship doesn't click when your emperor thinks he's the god. The final blow comes in 393 CE, when Emperor Theodosius IV, fresh off a Christianity glow-up, bans all pagan festivals. Olympics included. After a millennium, the flames snuffed out. Olympia's temples crumble. Earthquakes and floods bury the site, and the games fade into legend, preserved in old texts and scholars' daydreams. But the story doesn't end there. In the 19th century, that ancient spark flickers back. A Frenchman, Baron Pierre de Coubertin, obsessed with classical Greece, decides it's time to revive the games, not in a ruined temple, but as a modern, global showdown. In 1896, the first modern Olympics kick off in Athens, right where it all began. Today's games are louder, flashier, and way more clothed. But the echoes are still there. The 4-year cycle. The torch lit at Olympia, the chase for excellence and unity. From nude sprinters in dusty fields to televised gymnastics and synchronized swimming. The Olympic journey's wild, messy, and human. And it all started with a cook, a 600-foot race. and a wreath of olive leaves under Zeus's gaze. Yo, what's good? Everyone, welcome back to the channel! We're wrapping up our epic dive into the ancient Olympic Games, where sweat, glory, and a whole lot of nudity made history under the watchful eyes of Zeus. If you missed chapters 1 and 2, we've been breaking down how a cook named Corebus kicked off the games in 707 BCE, how athletes trained like warriors for a shot at eternal fame, and how Olympia was as much a political stage as a sacred sports fest. Catch up with the links in the description. If you're vibing with this, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Shout out to everyone joining us at 12:41 a.m. or whatever wild hour you're at. All right, let's crank up the ancient Greek vibes. Think a lyre riff, a cheering crowd, and the smell of incense, and jump into Chapter 3, where we see how the Olympics shaped lives, cultures, and the world beyond the dust of Olympia. The games are over. The dust settles, and the crowds pack up their sandals and head home. But for the victors, those crowned with olive wreaths, life's never the same. In ancient Greece, an Olympic win isn't just a trophy, it's a divine endorsement, a ticket to legend status. You're not just a guy who ran fast or wrestled hard. You've got Zeus's nod, and that comes with perks that'd make modern athletes jealous. Back in your polis, you're a hero, rolling into town like a rock star. Statues pop up in your honor, carved to show off those abs you earned sprinting in the sun. Poets like Pindar drop odes so flowery they could outshine a god's garden. Hyping your name for generations. Your city might hook you up with front row seats at festivals, or get this free meals for life. In a world where dinner's not always a sure thing, that's a flex worth more than gold. The perks don't stop there. Wealthy patrons line up to sponsor you, like ancient brand deals. Families start pitching better marriage prospects. Your victory's basically a glowing Tinder profile. Kids learn your name in school. And if you're from a small polis, you might end up on the local coinage. Your face minted in bronze for eternity. But with the hype comes pressure. You're a symbol now, proof your city's the best. Some victors get sent on diplomatic missions, negotiating deals with the clout of a champ. Others are tapped as generals. Your body won the wreath. Now your name's got to lead armies. It's a lot, and not everyone's cut out for the spotlight. Some get cocky, like the dude who tried dedicating a statue to himself. And the gods, only for the locals to rewrite the plaque with shade. Others fall into scandal, trying to bribe their way to another win, thinking fame's a shield. It's not. Cheaters get fined, humiliated, and sometimes erased from the records. Their Kleos snuffed out for those who play it straight, though the reward's unmatched. Kleos, immortal fame. In Greek culture, that's the ultimate prize. Die young, your name lives on in stories. Live long, you're a mentor, a legend, maybe even a myth whispered by firelight. The Olympics aren't just a race or a fight. They're a forge where mortals become something more. Their deeds etched into the collective memory of a civilization that worships greatness. Zoom out, and the game's impact stretches way beyond the victors. for over 1,000 years, from 726 BCE to 393 CE. The Olympics are a cultural heartbeat, pulsing every 4 years through wars, plagues, and political chaos. They're a rare moment of unity for the Greek world, where city-states, usually ready to throw hands over a border dispute, come together under a sacred truce. The Echecheria isn't perfect. Sparta got banned for ignoring it, but it's a symbol of what Greeks could be when they're not. You know, stabbing each other, Olympia becomes a neutral ground, a place where Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and smaller polis can flex their pride without drawing swords. It's not just sport, it's a shared identity, a reminder that being Greek means chasing arete excellence. Whether you're hurling a discus or debating philosophy, the games shape Greek culture in subtler ways. Too, they elevate the body as art, tying physical prowess to divine favor. The nudity, the oil, the perfect proportions. It's not just practical, it's a statement. The Greeks see the human form as a reflection of the gods, and the Olympics are a living gallery of that ideal. This obsession with beauty and balance bleeds into their art. Think of those marble statues with abs sharper than a Spartan's wit. It's also in their philosophy, where the sound mind, sound body mantra becomes a way of life. The gymnasium, where athletes train, doubles as a school for ideas, producing thinkers as ripped as they are wise. The games don't just celebrate strength. They define what it means to be human in a world ruled by capricious gods. Politically, the Olympics are a power move. City-states pour resources into athletes, turning them into walking propaganda. A win's a flex for your polis's superiority, a chance to dunk on rivals without bloodshed. The sanctuaries littered with treasuries and statues, each a middle finger to the competition. Corinth's got a fancier pillar. Athens dropped a bigger bronze. Even the game's truce is strategic, giving leaders a chance to network, broker deals, or size up enemies over a sacrificial bull. It's like a UN summit with better wrestling and worse hygiene. The games don't erase Greek rivalries, they channel them, turning chaos into competition. But nothing lasts forever, not even sacred flames. By the 4th century CE, the Roman empires got Greece on lock. The games keep going, but they're not the same. Romans love the spectacle chariots, gladiators, blood, but the whole sport as worship thing doesn't land when your emperor's claiming god status. The spiritual core fades, replaced by bread and circuses vibes. Then, in 393 CE, Emperor Theodosius, I'm riding a Christian wave, drops the hammer, banning all pagan festivals, including the Olympics. After over a millennium, the torch goes dark. Olympia's temples crumble, floods and earthquakes bury the Altis, and the games slip into legend, preserved in dusty texts and scholars' nostalgia. For centuries, the Olympics are just a story, a romantic echo of a lost world. But in the 19th century, that echo gets loud again. Baron Pierre de Coubertin, a Frenchman obsessed with classical Greece, decides the games deserve a comeback, not in a ruined sanctuary, but as a global stage. In 1896, The modern Olympics are born in Athens, the cradle of it all. They're bigger, flashier, and way more clothed. With gymnasts, swimmers, and sprinters trading wreaths for medals. But the ancient DNA's still there, the 4-year cycle. The torch lit at Olympia. The pursuit of excellence, honor, and unity. The modern games carry the weight of that first sprint, that first wrestler pinned in the sand, that first poet hyping a champ's name. The legacy of the ancient Olympics isn't just in stadiums or record books. It's in how they shaped our idea of competition. They showed that striving for greatness, even at the cost of sweat and pain, is a universal language. The Greeks gave us a stage where humans could push limits, not for money, but for something bigger, a shot at immortality. That idea still drives athletes today, whether they're chasing a gold medal or a personal best. The games also taught us about balance, individual glory versus collective pride, competition versus camaraderie. They were messy, political, and sometimes brutal, but they were human, capturing the best and worst of what we can be. Today, when you watch a sprinter blaze down the track or a gymnast stick a landing, you're seeing traces of Coroebus, of wrestlers grappling in Olympia's dust, of a crowd roaring for a hero under Zeus's gaze. The Olympics, ancient and modern, are a reminder that we're all chasing something glory, meaning a moment that outlives us. From a 600-foot sprint to a global spectacle, the journey's been wild. But it started with a cook, a wreath, and a dream of being more than mortal. And in that dream, the Olympics live forever. Joe, what's good? Everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're kicking off a fresh saga tonight. Story 4. Chapter 1. Diving into the Whiskey Rebellion, a wild moment in early American history where farmers, whiskey, and a tax sparked a showdown that tested the brand new United States. It's 1791. The revolution's won, but the vibes are tense. Think less land of the free and more who's paying for this. If you're new here, we're starting a new tale, so buckle up. If you loved our Olympic Games, Dutch Golden Age, or Medieval in Stories, drop a comment with your favorite moment, and let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Shout out to everyone joining us at 12:43 a.m. or whatever wild hour you're at. All right, let's crank up the 1790s energy picture, a fiddle riff, and the clink of a whiskey jug, and jump into the Whiskey Rebellion. It's 1791, and the United States is less a country and more an expensive experiment. The Revolution kicked out the British, but it left behind a mountain of debt. The new government, fresh off ratifying the Constitution, is broke, and everyone's asking, who's footing the bill? Enter Alexander Hamilton, the first Secretary of the Treasury, who's basically the patron saint of financial systems. This guy doesn't just like strong economies, he worships them. Hamilton's got a plan to make the U.S. legit, consolidate state debts under the federal government, set up a national bank, and here's the spicy part, raise cash with taxes. Not just any taxes, but a federal excise tax on distilled spirits, aka the whiskey tax. To Hamilton, it's a no-brainer. Whiskey's everywhere. People drink it like water, especially on the frontier where actual clean water's a gamble. Taxing whiskey's like taxing air. It's a sure thing. Plus, it's a way to flex federal muscle, showing the states who's boss. But out in western Pennsylvania, where farmers are scratching out a living in the dirt, this tax isn't just unpopular, it's a gut punch. These aren't big-time distillers with fancy setups. They're small-scale folks turning excess grain into whiskey because it's easier to transport, lasts forever, and doubles as currency. Whiskey's not a drink out here. It's liquid gold. You can trade a jug for nails, pay wages, or barter for a pig. Now, the feds want a cut, and it's hitting the little guys hardest. See? The tax screws small distillers. Big producers can pay a flat fee, but small farmers get taxed per gallon, down to the last drop. It feels like the government's punishing them for surviving. To these folks, who fought in the revolution for no taxation without representation, this smells like betrayal. They didn't ditch King George just to have some suits in Philadelphia reach into their barns. The tax isn't just about money, it's about trust, or the lack of it. In log cabins and backwoods taverns, the talk turns from grumbling to defiance. The seeds of rebellion are planted, and whiskey's the spark. Out on the frontier, life's already a grind. West of the Alleghenies, it's practically medieval muddy trails for roads, news that takes weeks to arrive, and a government that feels like a rumor from a far-off land called Philadelphia. Whiskey's not a hobby, it's survival. A still in the barn means you can turn corn into something valuable, something that doesn't rot. Taxing. It feels like taxing their ability to breathe. And the way the tax is structured, it's a slap in the face. Small producers who can't afford the flat fee are stuck paying by the gallon, while big dogs in the East skate by. It's not just unfair, it's personal. At first, resistance is low-key. Farmers ignore tax collectors, lose paperwork, or just stare blankly when the feds show up. But it escalates fast. Collectors trying to enforce the tax get more than dirty looks. They face tar barrels, angry mobs, and some serious frontier attitude. In western Pennsylvania, things get especially heated. Tax officials are harassed, threatened, or straight up attacked. One poor guy gets stripped, whipped, and left in the woods with feathers in his hair, a clear message. Go back to Philly. The feds try issuing subpoenas. Nobody shows. Marshals attempt deliveries. Locals chase them off. By 1793, it's not a protest, it's open defiance, spreading across counties like wildfire. What makes it sting is the context. These farmers aren't random troublemakers. They're veterans, guys who bled for independence. They fought the British over taxes, and now their own government's pulling the same playbook. Didn't we just do this? Is the vibe, sometimes whispered, sometimes shouted. To them, Hamilton's tax proves the feds care more about Eastern bankers than Western dirt scratchers. It's not just unpopular, it's a symbol of everything they fear about centralized power elites in fancy coats making rules for folks they'll never meet. The government's watching, and what started as law-breaking is starting to look like something bigger. Rebellion. By 1794, defiance turns organized, armed, and dead serious. Western Pennsylvania's not just dodging the tax, they're challenging the Fed's right to govern. The flashpoint hits in July 1794, when A.U. Sestai Marshal David Lennox and a tax inspector, John Neville, a wealthy ex-general, dumb or brave enough to collect the tax, end up in the crosshairs. Neville's house, Bower Hill, outside Pittsburgh, is basically a fortress, ready for trouble. Trouble arrives in the form of hundreds of armed farmers. They demand Neville surrender and hand over any tax documents. He says no. Shots ring out. By the next day, it's a full-on gunfight. Rebels versus government men. Muskets popping. Chaos unfolding. Neville's house gets torched, and 2 people die. The message is clear. The frontier's not playing. In the aftermath, the rebels level up. A militia of nearly 7 Zero forms around Pittsburgh, calling themselves Defenders of Liberty and channeling straight 1776 energy. They hold meetings, pass resolutions, and start talking. Big some want the tax gone. Others want full-on Western independence. A new America west of the mountains. Federal officials bail. Tax offices shut down. And Pittsburgh's sweating bullets. Worried it'll burn. Word spreads, sparking mini rebellions in Kentucky, Virginia, even the Carolinas. To the feds, this isn't a tax dispute anymore. It's Shays' Rebellion 2.0, but with better whiskey and more guns. The rebels' demands are fuzzy, but one thing's crystal. They're testing the Constitution itself. If a region can defy federal law and walk away, what's the point of the Union? The stage is set for a showdown. The Whiskey Rebellion's not just a regional tantrum. It's the first real test of the Constitution's muscle. In Philadelphia, elites are freaking out, seeing the whole federal project unraveling. On the frontier, rebels are waving the liberty flag, sounding like revolutionaries. Caught in the middle is President George Washington, watching his dream of a united nation start to fray. This isn't a minor law and order issue. It's a make-or-break moment. Washington gets it. If the rebellion wins or goes unpunished, it tells every state they can ignore the feds. Game over for the Constitution. So, Washington makes a move that shocks everyone. He decides to lead the army himself. Yup, the only sitting U.S. president to ever command troops in the field. This isn't ego, it's strategy. The guy who stepped down after the revolution is showing the world the Constitution's got teeth. With Hamilton hyping him up as the ultimate hype man, Washington rounds up a massive Force 13. Sigilloso troops, bigger than the Continental Army at its peak. Militia from New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia gear up like it's 1776 again. Except now they're marching west to face their own people. Washington rides out in full military drip, grim and deliberate, his presence screaming, "Don't test me." The rebels, expecting letters and lawyers, aren't ready for muskets, drums, and a president on horseback. As the army marches, the rebellion starts to crumble. Many rebels scatter, realizing Philly's not bluffing. By the time Washington's force hits western Pennsylvania, the fight's mostly gone. He hands command to General Light Horse Harry Lee and heads back to Philly Point Maid. The government can and will enforce its laws. But Washington's not out for blood. He wants a message, not a massacre. And the frontier's about to learn what happens when you challenge the feds over a jug of whiskey. What's good? Everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're diving right back into the Whiskey Rebellion, where attacks on whiskey in the 1790s turned Western Pennsylvania into a battleground and put the new U.S. government to the test. If you missed Chapter 1, we set the scene with farmers facing off against Alexander Hamilton's whiskey tax, sparking defiance that grew into a full-blown rebellion. Catch up with the link in the description. If you're vibing with this, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Shout out to everyone rocking with us at 12:45 a.m. or whatever wild hour you're at. All right, let's crank up the 1790s vibes. Think of Fiddle Jam and the clatter of muskets, and jump into Chapter 2 of our Whiskey Rebellion saga, when George Washington's army rolls into western Pennsylvania in the fall of 1794. They're expecting a fight 13,000 troops, led by the president himself, ready to squash a rebellion that's been thumbing its nose at the federal government. But instead of a battlefield, they find silence. The rebel militias, once 7,000 strong, have mostly vanished into the hills. Towns that were spitting fire about the whiskey tax now greet the feds with awkward smiles and suspiciously good manners. The rebellion doesn't end in a blaze of glory. It fizzles like a damp firecracker. Washington's show of force marching west in full military drip did its job. The rebels, who thought the government would just send strongly worded letters, weren't ready for drums, muskets, and a president on horseback. But the feds aren't here to just flex and leave. They need to make a point. The Constitution isn't optional. Over 150 suspected rebels get rounded up, many looking more confused than dangerous. Some were just in the wrong tavern at the wrong time, caught up in the sweep. The government's walking a tightrope show. They mean business, without looking like tyrants bullying poor farmers. In the end, only 2 guys get convicted of treason, both tied to the attack on Tax Inspector John Neville's house at Bower Hill. They're found guilty under shiny new U.S. laws, facing the gallows. Then, in a plot twist that screams political chess, Washington pardons them both. Why the mercy? Washington's playing the long game. He's already proved the feds can enforce the law. 13,000 troops marching west sent that message loud and clear. Executing a couple of whiskey rebels might turn them into martyrs. Or worse, relight the fuse of rebellion. Instead, he opts for unity over vengeance. It's calculated, sure, but it's classic Washington firm when it counts, restrained when it wins hearts. The pardons show the government's strong, but not heartless, setting a precedent. The feds have the right to tax, the power to enforce, and the wisdom to know when to chill. For the first time since the Constitution dropped, the central government faces a real challenge and comes out on top barely. But it counts. Not everyone sees it as a W. Though, on the frontier, the rebellion's end doesn't erase the bad blood. To many farmers, it confirms their worst fears. The federal government's more about Eastern elites than Western grit. Hamilton's tax, meant to fund a strong nation, feels like a scheme to line bankers' pockets while squeezing the little guy. The March of 13. 00 troops. That's not law enforcement, that's intimidation. A reminder that Philly's calling the shots. Some even whisper the revolution was for nothing. Trading a king across the ocean for a new kind of overlord in fancy coats. The whiskey tax stays in place for now, but enforcement's a mess. Collectors are still too scared to show their faces in western counties. And in some spots, the tax is straight up ignored. The law's on paper, but the frontier's playing by its own rules. The rebellion's fallout isn't just about whiskey. It's about the soul of the new nation. Enter the two heavyweights shaping the debate. Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson, with visions for America. So different, they're basically from different planets. Hamilton, the tax's mastermind, sees the rebellion as proof a strong central government's non-negotiable. His America's urban, industrial, financially stable, and respected globally. The Army's march west is a win for order, a flex of federal muscle that keeps the Union from crumbling. To him, the rebels were a threat to the rule of law, and Washington's response troops, trials, pardons, shows a government that's tough but fair, a model for the future. Jefferson, though, is fuming, not at the rebels, but at Washington and Hamilton as Secretary of State. He's all about the small farmer, the rural life, and keeping government out of people's barns. To him, sending 13,000 troops to crush a tax protest isn't enforcement. It's tyranny, straight out of King George's playbook. Jefferson's America is decentralized, rooted in independent farmers, not bankers or merchants sipping tea in Philly parlors. He sees the rebellion as a cry from the margins, a warning that the feds are forgetting the revolution's roots. The whiskey tax becomes a flashpoint, a symbol of elite control versus the common man's liberty. This isn't just a policy spat. It's the birth of America's first political parties. Jefferson, teaming up with James Madison, starts rallying opposition to Hamilton's Federalist agenda. Their crew, soon called the Democratic Republicans, paint themselves as defenders of freedom, the Constitution, and the little guy. The Federalists fire back, calling Jefferson's camp mob-loving chaos agents who'd turn America into France's reign of terror. The rebellion's a perfect wedge, splitting the nation into camps. Centralized power versus local rights. Elites versus populists. Newspapers go wild, printing fiery editorials. Political clubs pop up, arguing what liberty even means. The whiskey tax debate's no longer about liquor. It's about who America's for, while the rebellion's crushed on the ground. It's lighting fires in the political arena. To Federalists, it's a success story after the Articles of Confederation's chaos, where rebellions like Shays went unchecked. The Constitution proved it could handle business. The peaceful dispersal, orderly trials, and Washington's pardons paint a picture of a mature government, powerful but not abusive. But to Democratic Republicans, it's a betrayal. The revolution was about fighting taxation without representation. And now the feds are marching armies against farmers. It feels like an occupation, not a union. They call it civil disobedience, not treason. And the word rebellion itself becomes a battleground insurrection to some, protest to others. The Whiskey Rebellion's becoming less about what happened and more about what it means. It's a mirror for the young nation's growing pains, showing how the Constitution's fine print plays out in real life. The feds can enforce laws, sure, but at what cost? Not everyone feels the government the same way Philly elites see protection. Frontier farmers see intrusion. The rebellion's a wake-up call. A republic doesn't run on parchment alone. It needs trust, buy-in, and a sense that the rules work for everyone, not just the guys with the nicest wigs. Washington's army may have won the day, but the bigger fight over America's identity is just getting started. Yo, what's good? Everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're wrapping up our saga on the Whiskey Rebellion, the 1790s showdown where a tax on whiskey set the frontier ablaze and tested the newborn United States like never before. If you missed chapters 1 and 2, we've been diving into how farmers in western Pennsylvania pushed back against Alexander Hamilton's tax, sparking a rebellion that forced George Washington to march an army west, only for the whole thing to fizzle out with pardons and political fallout. Catch up with the links in the description. If you're vibing with this, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Big shout out to everyone rocking with us at 12:48 a.m. or whatever wild hour you're at. All right, let's dial up the 1790s energy. Think a tavern fiddle and the clink of a whiskey jug and jump into Chapter 3, where we unpack the rebellion's endgame and its long shadow over America. The Whiskey Rebellion's over no epic battles, no towns burned, just a quiet retreat as Washington's threatened Ahu-Pu Potpoditom 000 strong army rolls through western Pennsylvania. In 1794, the rebels scatter, the feds arrest a few stragglers, and 2 guys get convicted of treason, only for Washington to pardon them in a masterclass of mercy over vengeance. On paper, it's a win for the Constitution. The government faced a challenge, flexed its muscle, and came out looking strong but fair. But the frontier's not throwing a parade. To those farmers, the tax is still a slap, and the army's march feels like Philly elites stomping on their way of life. The whiskey tax limps on, but enforcement's a joke. Collectors dodge western counties, and in some spots, the tax is straight up ignored. The law's there, but it's more suggestion than reality. Even Hamilton, the tax's brainchild, starts to see it's not worth the drama. The revenue's pitiful compared to the chaos it caused rebellion, political backlash, and a growing anti-federal vibe that's haunting his Federalist crew. The tax was supposed to fund a strong nation, but instead, it birthed an opposition party and made government overreach a frontier catchphrase. The irony's thick. All that noise for a policy that barely worked. Meanwhile, the frontier's booming. More settlers are heading west, and the idea of a far-off government taxing their hustle feels less like governance and more like a grudge. Enter Thomas Jefferson, who's been watching this unfold with a mix of "I told you so" and quiet strategy. When he wins the presidency in 1800, it's a seismic shift, the first peaceful power swap between rival parties. Jefferson's all about the small farmer, not Hamilton's banker buddies. One of his first moves, axing the whiskey tax in 1802. Poof! Gone. No riots. No flames. Just a quiet nod that sometimes fighting for control isn't worth it. The tax that sparked a rebellion, shaped political lines, and sent Washington riding, west vanishes with a pen stroke. It's a win for the frontier, but it's also a signal. The people's voice matters, even if it takes a militia to get heard. The law held, but the rebels left their mark. Now, let's talk legacy, because the Whiskey Rebellion isn't just a dusty history lesson. It's a blueprint for America's growing pains. At first glance, it might seem like a blip. Some farmers got mad. The feds flexed. Everyone went home. But dig deeper, and it's a snapshot of a nation wrestling with its soul. Who holds power? How far will people go to resist it? The rebellion forced answers. Yes, the feds can enforce laws, but at a cost pushed too hard, and you risk fracturing the unity you're trying to build. Washington's march showed the Constitution had teeth, but Jefferson's repeal showed it needs ears. 2. A republic doesn't run on ink alone. It needs trust, participation, and a sense that the rules aren't just for the guys in powdered wigs. The rebellion's a case study in governance. Scholars point to it when talking federal authority, the limits of protest, or how America's first political parties took shape. Federalists saw it as proof the Constitution worked, unlike the Articles of Confederation Day, when rebellions like Shays ran wild. This time, the government stepped up, restored order, and kept it chill with pardons. Democratic Republicans, though, saw hypocrisy, a revolution fought over taxation without representation, followed by an army marching on farmers. That's not liberty, it's control. The story became a symbol, wielded differently depending on who's telling it. Law and order versus the little guy's fight. Those echoes still ring today. Debates about taxes, rural disenfranchisement, or federal power versus local rights. They've got Whiskey Rebellion DNA. When people argue about government overreach or protest legitimacy, they're channeling the same questions those farmers asked in 1794. Who's the government for? Does it hear us? The rebellion's a reminder that laws need legitimacy, not just muscle. And power's a tightrope too much, and you're a tyrant. Too little, and you're a pushover. It's the only time a sitting president led troops in the field. A flex that set a precedent, but also a warning. Force works, but listening might work better. Culturally, the rebellion's got staying power. It's the spark that lit America's political divide, centralized control versus populist pushback. Newspapers back then went wild, and today's talking heads would have had a field day. It's a story we keep retelling, whether it's in history books or modern protests. The word rebellion itself carries weight treason to some, resistance to others, and that frontier spirit. It's still out there, in every small town, skeptical of big city rules. Every community that feels overlooked by the suits calling the shots. The Whiskey Rebellion wasn't really about whiskey. It was about who gets heard when the government makes moves that hit everyday lives. Washington proved the feds could act, but Jefferson showed they could adapt. Together, they set the stakes, A democracy's only as strong as its ability to balance power with empathy. The muskets are silent, the barrels empty, the tax long gone. But the fight it sparked about trust, fairness, and what it means to be free still burns, aged like the whiskey that started it all.